Hi everybody, welcome back to another Books and Looks video. If you are new here, hi, I'm Jen. Thank you so much for watching. My videos are a combination of two of my favorite things. I like to play with makeup and I like to read books. So I put them together and I do a get ready with me kind of video while I talk about a book I have recently read. Thank you for joining. If you are returning and you have seen some of my other videos, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy hearing about books and watching me do makeup. So I guess without further ado, I'll get started on my latest book. This is a book that I have recently read. It's called The Reading List by Sara Nisha Adams. Cute cover, right? I like that cover. But this book, excuse me, this book was actually a free book from a community event. And basically it's like, you know how schools have like science night or math night? Well, this is based on a literacy night, but it's not just a night, it's like a long-term thing. And basically through grants and stuff, our school gets hundreds and hundreds of copies of books. And they usually have three. They have an adult book, they have a young adult book or like a middle grade book, and then like a kid's book. And they all have some sort of connection. This year's theme was books about books. So this is a book about books. I really enjoyed it, although honestly, I would not have chosen it for myself to read. Like, I wouldn't have seen this in the library and been like, I want to read that. The back doesn't make it sound super exciting to me, and it wasn't super exciting, but I did enjoy it and I loved what it had to say about books. So let me just tell you about it. So it takes place modern day in London, and there's two main characters, and the narration jumps between the two of them. The one is Alicia. She is a high school girl who is struggling with some family difficulties. Her mother has depression and basically like hasn't worked in months because of it, and just, you know, stays at home in bed with the blinds drawn kind of a thing, like a really severe situation with depression. She won't leave the house. She won't talk to anybody. So Alicia and her brother are essentially, her brother's in college. Well, he was in college. Now he works two jobs to try to, you know, sustain everything. And so they're basically just struggling to survive and care for their mom who has depression, right? So that's Alicia's story. She has a part-time job for the summer in the local library. She's not like a big library or book person. Hold on, I feel like that's a little too high. That's better. She's not a big book person, but she needed a job and she got a job at the library. So she's working at the local library, right? Dealing with all this personal stuff. And then the other narrator is Mukesh, who is an older gentleman. I'm guessing, like, I don't think it says, but I'm guessing like in his 60s, late 60s. His wife died like 6 months ago, maybe a year ago. I don't remember exactly. She died of cancer. And he has 3 daughters who are all adult and live out of the house. And, you know, they're all struggling with the loss of like the glue that held the family together, essentially. And Mukesh is really, really sad and depressed and lonely, but he's going about his life and he's trying, you know, but he's really lonely. And even when his daughters reach out to him, they're always just like, make sure you're eating. I'm going to come over, I'm going to clean your house. I'm going to cook you some food and put it in containers, put it in your fridge, and then they leave because they have their own lives. They have kids, they have husbands, they have jobs. So he just feels like they're coming in, doing what they need to do and leave, and not like spending time with him, right? So he's struggling with that. And the one daughter has a little girl named Priya, who used to be really close to his wife, her Gram. And so like they used to read a lot of books. Like they would read books. She would recommend books to Priya. And then when the wife died, Priya basically like never really came over anymore, which is just even more loneliness for Mukesh. And one day he's like, I don't know, cleaning his house or doing something, and he finds a book, The Time Traveler's Wife. And he realizes it's a library book that his wife had taken out weeks or years ago. I think it was 2 years. And he's like, oh my gosh, I need to return this to the library. However, he can't bring himself to because one of the last things in his house that like reminds him of his wife. So he decides to read it. So he's reading this book and he is feeling like super connected to his wife through it because he knows that she read it, and he's realizing like, oh, she was always reading books, and I don't want to do that yet. And I basically just left her have her space. I wish when she was alive that I could have like talked to her more and asked her about what she was reading and got more interested in the characters or whatever, and I never did. And so he kind of regrets that. But he's reading The Time Traveler's Wife, and if you don't know the book, by the way, you should read it. It's really good. They made it into a movie, but as usual, the movie isn't as good as the book. But it is about a time traveler who has like this weird thing. He's like the only one in the world who it ever happened to, and he literally is living his life out of order. He is growing, and I'm not going to get into that story. Read it. It's a good book. So Mukesh loves it because it reminds him of like his relationship with his wife and how he's basically in his memory reliving their whole life kind of out of order, because you know how memories are just like wherever. So he's feeling like a real strong connection to this book, not just because it was his wife's and she read it and so he feels like connected to her, but also the story reminds him of his own marriage and life, because at the end of the book, spoiler alert, the husband dies. And so, you know, he also lost his wife, so he's feeling connected to that as well. He loves it. So he decides, I want to keep reading because it really connects me with my wife. It makes me feel reconnected with her, even though she's gone. So he goes to the library where Alicia, the other narrator, works, and he returns the book, and he asks Alicia for other recommendations of books that he could read. He's like, I've never really been a reader, but I'm starting to now. What books can you recommend? Remember, she's not a reader. So now the narrator switches to Alicia. It's not really, yeah. Now Alicia, we hear Alicia's side of the story for a little bit. She got this job because she needed money. She doesn't really care about books or whatever. She's not a reader. And so she basically just does what she has to do. And she's at work this one day, and a book gets returned, and she's looking through it, and she finds a reading list. She finds a reading list with, I think, 7 or 8 books listed on it. It just says, in case you need this, and it has some really, really good books. In a second, I will tell you what the books are. I'll open it up. So Mukesh comes in and asks her, and she's just like, ugh, gosh, leave me alone. I just want to like get paid and go home. But when he asks her a question of book recommendations, she kind of panics. She's a little bit rude to him at first. Like, I don't know, just go pick a book. Like, it doesn't really matter. And just like, this book is 2 years overdue. She's really mean to him. So he gets kind of offended, but he just walks away and goes wandering around the bookshelves trying to find a random book. Doesn't know what he's doing. He's feeling all bad. She feels really guilty because she was mean to him, and that was completely unnecessary. She's got her own stuff going on, right? So she finds this reading list, right? And she's like, I'm going to recommend one of these books to him because I don't know, he didn't do anything wrong. And so try to make amends. She shares this the first book on the reading list, which the reading list includes, number 1, To Kill a Mockingbird. So that's the first book that she recommends to him to read. She helps him find it, and he checks it out. And then she's like, ugh, he's going to come back. Or he even says like, oh, cool, I'll read this and I'll let you know when I'm done. And maybe you can give me another recommendation. So she's like, ugh, oh my gosh. Okay. So she feels like she needs to read the book too, because she's like, he's going to come in here and he's going to ask me about the book, and I'm going to look like an idiot. I don't want to look like an idiot. So she decides to read the book so that she can talk to him about it. So they're off in their own separate worlds reading To Kill a Mockingbird at the same time. So they are both like feeling connected to this book, right? So Mukesh, he loves this book because he loves Atticus and thinks Atticus is like this amazing man, and Alicia also is just so impressed with Atticus because her dad left the family, which is part of the reason that her mom is depressed, but also because she has like a legitimate mental health struggle. But so she's like, oh, I wish I had, I can relate to Scout and Jen because they only have one parent, and Atticus is such an amazing parent, and then all I have is this mom who's struggling with mental health, and I have to take care of her. I wish I had a mom to take care of me the way Atticus, blah, 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 blah. So they both really connect to Atticus. And when they finish the book, they come together and they start chatting about it, and they find like some little nuances that the other one didn't recognize, and they think it's really interesting, and they chat about it. And then they go to the next book. The next book on the list is Rebecca. If you're unfamiliar with Rebecca, P.S. I have read To Kill a Mockingbird. Great book. I recommend it only because it's an American classic, and I feel like everybody should at least know what the book is and like what it's about, and it's pop culture, kind of, not pop culture, but it's part of our culture. Everybody knows To Kill a Mockingbird, at least to some degree, so I'd read it. The old movie, great old movie, but it doesn't do the book justice. It's only like 40% of the actual book, so read the book. Again, the next book is Rebecca. So Alicia recommends it to him to read Rebecca, and again, she's gonna read it at the same time because she's like, he's gonna ask me about it, and I actually really enjoyed the conversations we had about Mockingbird. So now they're both reading Rebecca. Rebecca is about 150 years old. I don't know when it was published. I'll look it up and tell you. But it's supposed to be a scary story. I read it. I didn't find it that scary. It was vaguely creepy, but I didn't find it like super scary. However, Mukesh is reading it. And by the way, it's not just about them reading this book. They both have their own separate lives. So Mukesh has like his daughters, and then he also bumps into his wife's best friend from when they were alive. And she would come over and hang out a lot, but they haven't seen each other since the wife died a couple years ago. So he bumps into her, and she's also widowed. So they start kind of spending time together and just keeping each other company in their sadness. But that in their culture is like a little bit frowned upon and questionable. So he's kind of dealing with that, okay? The fact that he's lonely and he finally found a friend, and it is completely platonic. Like, there's no romantic element at all here. He's just, I should probably do my makeup. He is just legitimately enjoying her company because he's lonely and he doesn't have anything else, right? She's cooking for him and whatnot. So, and Alicia, well, hold that thought, Jennifer. So when he's reading the book Rebecca, he is feeling particularly freaked out because Rebecca is about this woman who marries this older widower, and his dead wife's name was Rebecca. And she feels like that Rebecca is like haunting their lives because it's like her house, her furniture, her everything, even the servants who work in this house all like miss Rebecca and loved Rebecca, and they don't like this new young wife. Like, how dare she? So Mukesh, as he's reading this while he's reconciling and getting together with this new friend of his, he is feeling like, oh my gosh, like, it's, the Rebecca's like my dead wife, and I'm bringing in this new woman into my home and into my life, and is it ever going to be okay? And so he's getting weirded out by it, and he starts not seeing, but like he envisions this character from the book, like looking at him sternly and like giving him dirty looks, like, how dare you do this to your dead wife, etc., etc. So he's struggling with that. And then on the other side, we have Alicia, who did not find the story that scary. She liked it, but she didn't find it scary so much as just like, why do people live their lives this way? Like, why can't they just be honest with one another? And like, the husband needed to like be more respectful, not respectful, but like more supportive, because he wasn't super supportive. He was like working and traveling and stuff, whatever. And so she's just like, I hope to have a love like this in my life, but I also want somebody who's going to be supportive. And I'm always the one supporting everybody else. Like, at my job, I'm supporting people. At home, I'm supporting people. And that, like, she kind of sees, like everybody, like anybody who reads a book pulls what out of it, whatever they need in that moment in their life, or whatever is going on in their life, right? So it's a similar situation with Mukesh and Alicia. They're each reading these books, and whatever is happening in their life at that moment is what they're getting out of it. So Mukesh is getting that, Alicia's getting her thing, and so then they get together again and talk about Rebecca, and they share. And Mukesh keeps this one a little bit closer to the chest because it's pretty personal, right? But also, Alicia has a brother, Aiden, who, again, I said earlier, is working 2 jobs and is really struggling. I don't know why I put that on my eyes. I didn't want that color there. Whatever, it's fine. So, as I was saying, Aiden is like working 2 jobs, and they basically just like crisscross each other all the time because somebody has to be home with the mom all the time. So like he has to go to work, so she comes home, takes care, and then when he comes back, she goes to work, etc. And they like leave sticky notes for each other, but that's just a cute little detail. So Alicia doesn't get as much out of Rebecca, but she's never been an avid reader. But when she comes home, she doesn't have a lot to do at home. She just sits and reads. And at one point, her mom is in the living room, like laying on the couch, sleeping, but not. If you've ever been depressed, you get it. And she starts reading the book out loud. Just randomly, she starts reading the book out loud. I'm not even sure if this is the book she starts reading out loud. It might be. I actually think she doesn't start reading out loud until a little bit later, but it doesn't matter. She starts reading out loud, and her mom responds to it positively. And it's actually like she sits up and starts listening. She doesn't really interact much, but she at least sits up and you can tell she's listening. She even asks a couple of questions because she starts reading in the middle of the story. So mom is like, well, who's this character and what's the background? So Alicia realizes that reading is kind of breaking through to her mom a little bit. So she starts making it a regular practice of reading the book with her mom, reading the book out loud with her mom. And they're like bonding over it as much as you can when her mom is in a pretty deep depression. But it's good, right? So now they get back together. Mukesh and Alicia get back together. They chat about the book, and then they go to the next book, which is The Kite Runner. I've read this book. Oh my gosh, you guys. If you have not read The Kite Runner, put it on your TBR and put it at the top of the list, because this book had such an effect on me. Like, I read this book like 15 years ago, and I still randomly think about this book and want to cry, want to laugh. Oh my, it's so good. So good. There are scenes in this book that are very disturbing and that still disturb me, and it's fiction and it's made up. There are scenes in this book that are so beautiful and poignant and powerful that it makes my heart swell. It's so good. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. He has the same author, I can't think of that author's name, but he has a couple of other books that are also amazingly excellent, but The Kite Runner is so good. No wonder it is on this reading list. Love it. So I digress. So they start reading The Kite Runner. The Kite Runner is very powerful for both of them, of course, because it's the freaking Kite Runner. Well, as this book, the reading list goes, oh dang, it's fine, whatever. As this book goes on, in the first part, while they're reading that book, there's a lot more discussion about the book and character reflection about the book they're reading. But as the book goes on, there's like less and less time spent on the reading list book and more on the characters in this book, right? So in the beginning, it talks a lot about what's happening in To Kill a Mockingbird and in Rebecca and The Kite Runner, and then it kind of fizzles out to the point where you get to the last book on the list and it's just mentioned as like, oh, they read this book. So now they're on The Kite Runner and they're also loving it, and their lives are getting more complicated. You find out Alicia had this circle of friends that she's not really talking to anymore because her life is so crazy, but she hasn't told anybody that like, oh, my mother is suffering from depression and like doesn't ever get out of bed, blah, blah, blah. She just basically stops hanging out with her friends, and they randomly run into her and they're like, where have you been? And she's like, oh, I'm just working a lot. And so she kind of loses her circle of friends because of the life she has to lead now to take care of her mom, right? And also working her job. But she has Mukesh. So now Mukesh is basically becoming her best friend because he comes into work and they talk about the books they're reading. So they're growing really, really close. And there's also a couple of other random people in the library, like regulars, that she's kind of sort of establishing a relationship too, because some of them have read some of the books, and so they start talking about it. And Mukesh, being lonely, is also like, this is my new friend, this girl from the library. And also in Alicia's little side story, there's this guy, Zach, and they like just bump into each other a couple of times because they live in the same neighborhood. Like, they bump into each other like at the market, and they happen to be on the same bus at the same time one time. So they kind of start chatting, and then they sort of start dating. It's real low key, right? But he's like 2 years older than her. He's a freshman in college, and he's taking summer classes. She's about to be a senior. It's summer before her senior year. But like, they're kind of hitting it off. They're spending some low-key time together, and it's lovely. So they each have these little things. Mukesh and Alicia also have these like side stories that are building. Well, now the story kind of moves on to some of the other books. So then we have Life of Pi. Again, I have not read this book, but I would recommend it. Everybody I know who's ever read it has really enjoyed it. So they're reading Life of Pi. Mukesh and Alicia chat about it, and Alicia kind of sort of gets that it's like a metaphorical story, and Mukesh doesn't. He just thinks it's like a fantasy fairy tale kind of story with a moral or something. And so they chat about it, and they kind of bond over the fact that they interpreted it differently and got different things out of it, like every book, but this one in particular. The next book on the list is Pride and Prejudice. And they're reading this book while Alicia's relationship with Zach is starting to kind of pick up. So she's feeling really connected to this book because it's romance. P.S. I'm not a fan of Pride and Prejudice. I don't really like romances, especially period piece romances, where it's like, oh, I need to find a husband. Oh, I need to find a husband. I need to go to this ball and find this husband. Or like, oh, he's such a terrible person, but I actually love him, and I'm going to be standoffish. And no, that drives me crazy. Same reason I didn't like Bridgerton. Sorry. Don't come at me. I didn't like Bridgerton. I only watched season 1. But it was just way too much of like, oh, I need the perfect dress and drama. There were a couple of little subplots that I liked, but whatever, I'm getting off topic again. I have not been able to get through Pride and Prejudice. I've tried to read it multiple times. I can't. Alicia, on the other hand, she loved it. She felt very connected to the main character because she was kind of sort of seeing Zach and, you know, the whole Elizabeth and Darcy thing. It was like this growing relationship. And Mukesh liked it okay, but he didn't really find a connection to it. He just thought it was like an interesting period piece. He's like, I know my wife would have loved it, so he likes it because of that. The next book on the list is Little Women, which, again, I loved this one. It's a great American classic. Not everybody's cup of tea. It's about, you know, these sisters. And because the characters in the story are all sisters, Mukesh loved this book because it reminded him of his 3 daughters. So he loved this book. He kept talking to Alicia about, I need to do my makeup. He's talking to Alicia, and he's like, oh, this one reminded me of, you know, this character really reminded me of my daughter, and this character reminded me of my other daughter, and I really enjoyed reading it. It took me back to the days when my girls still lived at home. And so it kind of made him bold because he really missed his kids and he missed his grandkids. And so on an outing, like he was having lunch with his daughters, and they said something that frustrated him. They said something about like, oh, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. And he was just like, oh, you need to stop telling me what to do and just like be with me. Like, I am lonely and I'm sad, and if I want to hang out with this girl at the library and talk about books, and if I want to spend time with your mom's old friend, whose name I cannot remember, which, by the way, if you have watched my other videos and you know me, I am killing it with the names, aren't I? Like, I remember Mukesh and Alicia and Aiden, and the mom's name was, dang it, I just jinxed myself. It also started with an A. It doesn't, I think it was Leah, because it was Alicia and Leah, and so I was like, those are a little too close. I'm pretty sure it was Leah. I remember Zach. I remember the granddaughter Priya. I'm impressed with myself, and I read this book in June, and it is now August, so like I am kicking butt with the names. Just kicking butt and taking names. Sorry. I'm very sorry about that. Anyway, so the where was I? I was talking about how much I love their names. They were reading little. Okay, yes. So Mukesh is like, I love it because it reminds me of my daughters. Alicia liked it too because it was about like girls who are living their life and being true to themselves. And that's something she's personally struggling with. She's like, I don't really know what my strengths are. I don't really know what my place is in this world. All I'm doing is taking care of my mom and trying to get through my day-to-day life. And so she's like, I'm inspired by these girls who are honest with themselves and are being their authentic selves. They recognize what their strengths are and they're going with it. So she's like, I'm going to start doing that too. She's like, apparently I'm a good reader. I'm good at taking care of my mom. And she's, dating Zach, who's building up her self-esteem as well. So she gets that from it. And it's really interesting. That's one thing that I really liked about the reading list, the book, is that even though it's multiple characters reading the same books, their interpretation of it and the things they're getting out of it are so vastly different. And that is so true of reading. 10 people can read the same book and 10 people will have 10 different understandings and interpretations and opinions of that book. And that's amazing, right? What other thing in the world, well, I guess a lot of things, but I just think that's what I love most about books, is not only is it an escape, which is what Alicia originally wanted from these books, like to forget her realities for a while, which is completely accurate. You can get that from books, an escape from your reality, but you can also find people who inspire you, characters who you connect with and that you can gain something from, learn from, understand other people better. Like, I just, that's why I love books. Heart books, love books. And that's what you get that's what Alicia and Mukesh get out of this too. And it also connects people, because obviously Mukesh and Alicia would have never become friends like they did. And they become really tight. As we're coming close to the end of the story here, you'll see they get really tight. Like at one point, I think, I don't remember why, but oh yeah, I think Alicia was dropping off the next book. Yeah, she was dropping off the next book to Mukesh's house, and he and his lady friend had just cooked a meal. So he's like, come on in with your boyfriend Zach, eat with us. So they do. So like now they have this like, not just talking about books, but like a legitimate friendship. And at one point, the library has like a community event, and Mukesh comes and he brings some of his family members. Like he brings Priya, who's a reader, and he invites some of the people from his church who are interested in reading. And they are all like, oh, you're Alicia. You're the girl from the library that Mukesh has been talking about. And even Zach is like, oh, this is that guy you've been telling me about from your work. So like they're talking to their friends about one another so that the other people in their lives know that there's this important person, right? So my point is, they have really become ingrained in each other's lives, right? They have bonded, and it's lovely. It's beautiful. So they continue reading. The next book on the list is Beloved, which is, I've never read it. I once heard it was creepy and weird, and I don't usually like creepy and weird books, so I've never read it. But after reading this, I'm going to put it higher on my list. I'm going to read it as a classic because I feel like I should, right? But they read it, and Mukesh is like, oh, I'm not a woman, so I don't really understand it, but it really helped me understand the connection between a mother and daughter. So it helps him again connect with his daughters. So in the one book made him stand up to his daughters and say, like, you need to stop being bickery and bossy. I love that you want to take care of me, but you need to do it in a way that actually works for me. And now he reads Beloved, and he recognizes like, oh, they're also mourning the loss of their mother, which he knew, obviously, but then he realizes through the reading of this book that this is the way that they're expressing their grief of losing their mother, by taking care of him and being a little bit aggressive in it. So he like learns to be a little bit softer with them. Alicia, I I don't remember what she gets out of Beloved, but as like a daughter of a mother who's struggling with the mental health, she definitely gains from it. Next, the last book is A Suitable Boy, which I have never heard of, and it's just a tiny little bit at the end of this book. It's a really big book apparently, and they liked it, but Mukesh said it reminded him of his early relationship with his wife, because it's about an Indian or maybe Pakistani, I forget, a Middle Eastern family. I don't remember what country they're from. And A Suitable Boy is like, she's trying to find a husband, and her family is trying to arrange a marriage for her that is suitable, a suitable boy. And like working through falling in love with the person that your family has deemed a good match. So Mukesh is like, this really reminds me of my early relationship, because he and his wife were in an arranged marriage. And so he's like, this really reminded me of the beginning of our relationship. And it was, it really took me back to memory lane. And Alicia doesn't really say much about whether she liked it or not. But so that's the end of the reading list, right? So at the end of the story, we have Mukesh and Alicia. They've read all these books. They've really bonded over them and many other things. They've grown very close. They have worked through a lot of their inner turmoil and struggle through the things they learned in this book and through the relationships they've gained by reading, like real life relationships. And at the end of the story, tragedy strikes. Aiden, that's Alicia's brother, he ends up dying by suicide. He something to do with the train tracks. He threw himself in front of a train or something. I'm not sure exactly. But like, she comes home from work one day and Aiden's not there, and she's very worried, and mom is like in a whole to-do, so she's very distracted, but also like back of her head she's like, where's Aiden? The next morning, we still haven't seen Aiden, and police knock on the door and they say, we found your brother, blah blah blah, he died by suicide. And so Alicia doesn't know what to do. Her mom is useless. She's already depressed, and now she's lost her son. But, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with anybody. But Mukesh comes by, he finds out what's happening. He tries to be there for her. They have the funeral. Mukesh comes, and so does his lady friend. And they sit down and they talk to her after the funeral, like a little bit later, like they're out and about or whatever. And they basically give her what she needs in that moment, which was really just somebody to sit there and hold her, because she can't do that to her mom. She's holding her mom. Her mom's not holding her. So she has this wonderful couple of friends who are there for her in a really, really, really hard time. Her uncle and cousin come by to help take care of some things, which is helpful. And by the end of the story, interestingly enough, the mom, you might not think so, but this actually kind of pulls her out of her depression a little bit, because she couldn't come to the funeral. She couldn't get herself to leave the house because of her depression being so bad. So when Alicia comes home, she finds her mom sitting on the front porch, which is way more than she's ever done. She's never even left the house in like a year or something. So maybe not a year, but either way, she is like, oh my gosh, Mom, what are you doing here? She's like, I tried to come to the funeral. She's wearing funeral clothes. Like, she's actually like dressed. So she's like, oh my gosh, Mom, what's going on? She's like, I tried to come. I wanted to come. I know I needed to come, but I just couldn't get myself there. So Alicia's like there for her and whatnot, but it's a step in the right direction. And she agrees at that point to, via like Zoom or whatever, to start seeing a therapist and taking medication, which is huge. So the story ends with a tragedy, but, she has Zach. Their relationship is starting to get more, sturdy. She has Mukesh. Her mom has decided to take steps toward getting help. And it's good, right? There's a lot of good things coming out of this. I feel like, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of touch up with my eyes. So the story ends on this great note, and like the core message is that books offer a lot to people. It started off as a way to escape the difficulties of life and maybe reconnect with somebody that you miss and love, and it ends up creating an entire community, right? Which is the beautiful thing about this literacy event in my community, because this book literally has brought people together. Like, literally, we had events and stuff that we got together and had like book chats and trivia events, and it was awesome. Like, I just love it. I love it. I love it. So that's the end of the book. Oh, I forgot another cool thing. So the majority of the story was Mukesh and Alicia, and it was switched back and forth chapters telling each side of the story the whole way across. But occasionally, another random character would tell a story, and it would only be one chapter. But it was their experience with the reading list, and some of them were like from like years ago. So this reading list had been out and about in the world for years, and you come to find out that there are multiple copies. So Alicia found one in the library book, and then there was a woman who found it in the grocery store, and she put it on the community bulletin board to think that somebody would find it, but then she decided to take it back and keep it because she wanted to read the books. And she was like so intrigued by it. She wanted to figure out like who made this reading list, where did it come from. She wanted to try to find the owner. Of course, she never actually did. She pops back up into the story a couple of times because she's local and she comes to the local library. So like you as the reader recognize that she also did the reading list, but is this lip? Yes. She also read the reading list, but Alicia and Mukesh, who interact with her in the library, had no idea that she's also read the reading list. And then there was another lady that went to the gym and found the reading list in her shoe cubby. And so she's lonely, and she decides to use the reading list as a way to connect with people, because she goes to the library and asks if there's any type of book clubs or anything that she could join to read these books and chat about them. And so she does, and she ends up making friends and finding a community of people. So a lot of these people are like lonely and in need of connection with other people, and the reading list brings them together. And then the big twist at the end, if you haven't already figured it out, the reading list was created and distributed in random places around the community by Mukesh's wife. In the months that she was battling cancer leading up to her death, she made this list, wrote it out multiple times, and then just like she took it to the gym, she took it to the library and put it in random books. She literally randomly dropped it at the grocery store on purpose. And her goal was to bring people together, because she knows that books bring people together. So the whole time, Mukesh was reading a series of books that his wife created. And so it was just this beautiful little like bow at the end that brought everything together. I really did like it. It was a relatively happy ending, save the fact that Aiden passed away. It was good. I really, really liked it, and I feel like I would recommend it to people who like realistic fiction. It had good pacing. It had really good, really strong characters. If kind of flat, good characters. I loved the development of the plot and how the characters' relationships grew. I thought that was really, really well done. The complexity of them. The reading list was a great reading list. I will add the reading list to my description below so you can see the books and read some of them. And then I also liked the ending, that it had a relatively happy ending, and that the struggles that our two main characters were going through, while not resolved, were definitely addressed and moved towards something more positive, which we always like. So yeah, that is the end. This is a long video. I apologize. This is my look today. I put on a little bit of teal, going a little bit different today. Yeah, I hope you like it. And I hope you like this book. If you read or know any of the books on the reading list, add some comments below about which ones you've read, which ones you liked, didn't like. Like, I didn't like Pride and Prejudice. I'm not super interested in reading A Suitable Boy. But which ones have you read? Which ones have you liked? And then what I think would be really cool is if people added comments of what books you would put on your reading list. I will share with you my reading list. I'll put it right here. These are 5 books that I think everybody should read. They're books that I felt personally moved by. I really, really enjoyed for a variety of reasons, whether they were emotionally poignant, they were funny, they were, I just thought, very well written and interesting plot, good twists at the end. I might have to come up with more than 5. We'll see. However many end up being there. Those are the ones that I would recommend and I would put on a reading list. So add some comments below of what you would put on a reading list that you think are books everybody should read. And with that, we are done. I hope you stuck with me through the whole video. I'm sorry, this was a long one. So I'm going to go ahead and end it there and say thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful everything. And as always, stay beautiful inside and out. Bye.